Welcome into another 5 Minutes with Sean, maybe 10, Mental Health Monday for July here as we get ready to clean up the month of July. And man, it is already time to get started with August. So as everyone knows, Mental Health Mondays are important to me. We've started this at the beginning of the year. I promised you a piece of content every month at minimum around it. And so I decided to try something a little different today. Typically, I have someone on in the field and we can talk about all these different things. Today, I'm going to try a new bit that I'm calling Two Dudes Talking Feelings, okay? And I picked someone very specific, someone I've seen open themselves up on social media, not be afraid to talk about the icky things in life where it might not be so easy, so sexy. The guy is as real of a human as I have found. He's someone that shows struggle, shows success, and all he really wants to do, I think, is help people. So if everyone would please join me in saying welcome to Joe Ruggeri. Joe, how are you today?
Sean, thanks for the introduction. I'm doing well, very humbled and grateful to be on the show. Thank you for the very nice and kind words, my man. I'm doing well, man. I am, like I said, I'm just trying to stay more grateful. I think we had a brief conversation about this in our messaging, but I think this is a great thing that you're doing, trying to get more men talking about their feelings, trying to open up to the life, because let's face it, Sean, I think you and I both know that life is not all about happiness, and we can't always be striving to be looking for that pursuit of happiness all the time. And so I try to stay grateful, man. I've had a wild year. I know a lot of people have, with the whole pandemic and losing loved ones, relationships, you name it. But I think that over the course of these past 10 months or so, ever since I had to leave my daughter, I've been just trying to just stay more grateful and be more vulnerable. I've learned that when you can talk about your feelings and not like a sympathetic way, right? I'm not looking for apologies. I'm not looking for attention. Okay, like you said, I am essentially trying to help other people open up, and obviously in my industry, I'm trying to help them as well be more successful. But at the end of the day, I've come to find that when you really open up and talk about these struggles, and not only just the struggles, but where you're going and where you have come from, there's so much power, and there's so much strength in telling the truth to yourself. And I think that's just one thing that I've learned over these 10 months and even 3 years, because I am a person that didn't always tell the truth to myself. I was a bit of a scared, insecure individual who took a lot of shortcuts. And one day I had a mental breakdown and I lost it, and I needed help. And I went on medication and I started talking to a therapist, and things started to transform for me. And so
Joe, I want to take you back a step. Thank you for opening yourself up.
Sorry for rambling.
Yeah, no, please, no. I've got a lot of notes here, and I don't want to kind of circle back too late. So,
sure.
You talk about grateful. Obviously, I couldn't agree more with you. I say to lots of people that I'm grateful for the life that I have. Although it takes work, you can't just wake up and have the life that you have. You have to put in the time and the effort. You talked about vulnerability. And in vulnerability, you said you weren't looking for sorry, or you weren't looking for apologies, right? I don't tell my story, to have someone come to me, put their hand on my shoulder and go, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry this happened to you. It's like, no. This is not, this is for me, it's context. It's so that you
Right.
understand where I came from versus where you went. You open up right away. You tell me about a mental breakdown. You were already a father, Joe, when this happened to you? I mean, you were already living day to day, or what was the timing in your life when this happened?
It's a great question. I was not a father at the time. I was in a new city, which was Boston, and I came from Vermont, where I sold a house. Actually, I was living in a house that I owned, and I was living in a very comfortable lifestyle. I didn't necessarily have the job and I wasn't working at a company where I knew that I was growing professionally. And so I took a risk and moved to a different state, left everything I knew, and left the equity that I was living in behind, and took on a new job in a totally different industry. But I was also doing it for reasons that I wasn't really necessarily honest with myself about, right? It was petty reasons.
So you're talking about the whole change in general, Joe? You're talking about the change of job from leaving Vermont to go to Boston. The reasons you did that, you basically you lied to yourself.
I lied to myself, but I also lied to others, and I was having a very hard relationship with my family at the time, my mother, my brother, and I was just in a mental rut. I didn't want to get out of bed in the morning. I didn't want to go to sleep. It was just a very depressive time, and I didn't want to be alone. And I didn't talk to anybody about this. And I just let all these feelings sit in and just manifest.
Yeah, fester.
Fester, and it just built into this person that I knew I wasn't. And so I went and saw a therapist, and things started to change.
So did you, when can you give me, I don't mean to pry too far here, but can you give me an example of the lie you told yourself about why it was time to leave versus the reality of what you found it to be later? Like, do you have like one of those where you're like, I told my family I left because I wanted a new job, but the reality was because it's them and I'm tired of dealing with them, or whatever the case is?
Yeah, it was a girl.
That's why you were moving?
That is why I thought I had left, but it wasn't the reason why. I knew deep down why I needed to make a change, which was to transform my career and to put myself into, give myself more options.
Well, you learn a lot about yourself when you're outside the family net, I call it, right, Joe? So if you're living in an area where family is localized, or at least reasonably localized, you feel like you're in that net. When I met my wife, then girlfriend, we moved to Colorado. It was just her and I. You know what I mean? And we had both been in our family nets our whole lives in Chicago. We moved out to Colorado, and there ain't nowhere to turn, right? So when the two of you get after it and you want to argue and you're living together and you're like, well, I'm just going to go to my parents' house. Like, nope. And you can call people, you can do all that. But Joe, when you were making the move, when did you realize the reality of your move? Like, how far into it were you just like, yeah, so this is really why I was here. It wasn't because of the girl or because of this. It was because of the job.
Honestly, it's when I started talking to a therapist, and I realized that, it doesn't necessarily matter the reasons why I thought I left, because at the end of the day, you left.
That's it. No matter.
And it doesn't matter why. You made the decision, and you're here now. And you can make all the reasons in your head why things aren't working the way they worked. And you can go run and quit your job and go back to Vermont, because that's essentially what I was planning on doing. I was a week away from quitting my job because I wasn't successful.
And
in that
just
expression.
returning and just going, just plugging
Yeah.
back into the Vermont life. Nothing
Yep.
had changed. Joe
Yep.
took 8 months, 9 months to get his life out there. Decided no, he'd rather be in Vermont. So that was a tipping point for you then, huh?
Yeah, it was. That was. I literally had my new job working at a hotel in Vermont, and I was literally 1 week away from putting in my 2 week notice.
Joe, what the hell put the brakes on it? The therapist, the discussion, is that what put the brakes on it, or was there a break in your life outside of that work-wise that gave you an opportunity?
Your audience is gonna think that I'm crazy here, but it was literally one. It was one conversation
With a
for
therapist or
me
someone else?
with the therapist.
Okay, I don't think that's crazy. Was that your first ever conversation with a therapist?
Ever.
Then I definitely don't think it's crazy because it's transformative when you pay someone to be objective. Okay,
Right.
It's not anything. It's what my clients say to me. My clients just call me their digital therapist, right? They want to call me and hear me tell them that's wrong. You're wrong. This is not what you want to do, and it's uncomfortable, but it's necessary. Joe, let's just quickly. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but how does Joe arrive at the consideration of a therapist, then B, the selection of a therapist, and then C, the most important thing for me, which is visit number 2. You see, 1 is easy. The question is, will you go back to have this done to you again? Talk me through those, Joe.
Therapy was something that I've always been an emotional person. I've always had a lot to say. I've cried a lot in my life. I thought I was weak for that.
You're not. I know you already know that, but you're not. Anyone else watching, you're not. Yeah. So you can just take I've seen the strongest, richest dudes in the country cry. So it's you're right. Cool. It happens. All right. So you've always been an emotional dude. All right.
I've always been an emotional dude, but I always have had a hard time really trusting my instincts and listening to my instincts. And there was a while when I was at my job previous to Modus, which is Verizon Wireless, but I just wasn't. I mean, not saying anything bad about the company. Just I was in a bad place mentally, and whenever you're in a bad place mentally, you're not going to really enjoy what you're doing or who you're doing it for. If you can't love yourself, then you can't love the other people that you're with. So, it was something that I always wanted. Therapists in Vermont, where I was living in Burlington, was tough to find. There was waiting lists among waiting lists, and I just couldn't find one. Nothing opened up. And so when I moved to Boston, it took 8 months for me to go in. So what I did was I contacted my health insurance provider, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I just got a list of therapists. And I went through the list, read some reviews, and I found one therapist who I'm extremely grateful for finding one therapist. I know sometimes it takes a while for people to find one that they can trust, but for me, I was so desperate, but also vulnerable. And he happened to be he happened to be the person that I needed to talk to. And I cried a lot in that first session, just because I left out so many feelings. I talked about so much that were things that were so paramount to my life, like the way I treated my brother, the way I treated my mother, like things I said that I knew I was just haunting me. And so, but it came down to me discussing that I was making one wrong decision after another. And I was on that trajectory of making another wrong decision, which was running away from my struggles, thinking that just because I'm having a bad quarter or because I'm in a bad relationship, that running and going somewhere else will make it better. And I think that's something that I tended to do in my 20s. Was I had a bad go at a job. Let's go find something else in a different state. You can make a different, making different impression, and you can start fresh again. So I think that was what it was, just understanding that I was a scared boy, and I just couldn't trust anything that I was telling myself, and I was so indecisive with how I talked to myself. And so after this, it felt like a week of therapy, but it was only an hour. I was like, I have to do this every single week. And so for me, it was easy to go back to him, because I just realized that after because I left that meeting that first time, and I said, you're not fucking quitting. You're staying here. And after that, I decided to get an apartment closer to my job. And things just started to get better. I
bet it's not often you told yourself that, though, Joe.
What's that?
I bet it's not often you told yourself that you weren't going to quit. I bet often it was easier for you to just tell yourself you were going to quit, and then yourself would sign off on it, and you'd move ahead with the plan, right? And that's a huge part of it, man. It's a huge part of it. Talk to me quickly about how does that change for you once you become a father, Joe? What changes in you emotionally? Your emotional intelligence is seemingly becoming the buzzword around, talking about your feelings and your emotional intelligence. How did that change for you once becoming a father? Because I am not one. I like to consider myself the world's greatest uncle. That's also all I am fit to be. I am admittedly far too selfish to share my time or my wife's time with anyone else. Period, in general. So let alone that. But that's who I've always been. I've always been weirded out by kids. It's never been something I've ever really wanted to be. But I get it changes you. Talk to me about quickly, how did it change you around this mental health discussion?
Well, thank you for sharing that and being honest about who you are, because sometimes, like, we just met, and I know we talked a little bit, but I too was selfish, man. I too I wouldn't really call myself a full-blown narcissist, but like, I had a bit of an issue with just being available for other people and listening to other people without talking about myself. And so when I had a child, when my ex and I had a child, I mean, I think a part of your ego gets, I wouldn't say kicked in the gut, but I would say that you really have to take a big look in the mirror and really ask yourself, because I was 8 months, I was 1 year removed from going to therapy that one time. That's when we realized that we were having a daughter. One year after.
After your first therapy session.
1 year later.
1 year later, you knew you were going to have a child in 9 months from then. So like almost 2 years by the time the baby was all there.
Yes.
You were the 21 months net of your first ever appointment.
Correct.
Wow.
Correct. So
isn't that interesting though, Joe, that you were no more preparing your life than you'd ever been in that moment leading up to it. And I think that speaks to something. I think that speaks to the way life works for me, is that your life, it gives you whatever it gives you, but sometimes it gives you things right when you need it. And you had already grown emotionally to be able to have that. Because I imagine your response, if I would have caught you 2 days previous to therapy number 1, your response to you having a child probably is wildly different than the day you find out 21 months later.
100%. 100%. I know that I'm not the same person that I was when I went into therapy. And I'm also not the same person that I was when the baby was born.
Got it. So
Every day.
before dad, before therapy, those are two different Joes. Now we're seeing what would you call it the best version of Joe that you have yet to put forth? Is that fair? Is that what you're working on?
I mean, I think if you're not trying to be a better version of yourself every single day, then you're really not trying to live life to its fullest. And you're living someone else's dream. If you're not living to be a better version, or if you're trying to appease people and you're trying to improve your status, or in my opinion, that's just the life that I would rather live to improve myself every single day. And I've learned.
I completely agree with you. I don't want to be anybody else's person. I want to be the best person of me. I think people around us do that. For you, probably a lot is your daughter. The opportunities you get there, that probably makes you a better person as you drill down into that and you get more involved and she begins to grow up and you see all these things. Joe, again, I told you I was going to be respectful of your time, so I'm gonna stick to that. I know you're a man on the road, man, doing many things. Joe, what advice would you give to people? And that's why I love this segment already, because this is just two regular people. I don't have a PhD in shit, right? I've been living life. Joe's the same way. We're a couple of Grateful Dead fans, a little bit of sports fans here. We're kind of guys. Look, I don't fix anything, right? I got manicures and shit, so I'm not that guy. But for the most part, I'm a guy's guy. Joe, what advice do you give to guys who are considering therapy or even considering talking about their feelings with other dudes or their wives or anyone? I really don't care who you do it with, but what advice, man, do you give to folks to wrap us up here today?
Yeah, so I think, from my perspective, I was a self-abusive person who told myself that I wasn't good enough, I wasn't smart enough, I was the dumbest person in the room. I couldn't talk to people who were smarter than me. And I lived that day after day, every single day. And it just takes a toll on you. And you really don't become an attractable person, and you become a coward. And that's who I was. I was a coward in my own mind to myself. And cowards live thousands of lives, and courageous people only live one. I think that's a quote from Tony Robbins. But being courageous is being vulnerable. Being courageous is talking about your feelings. And a lot of people don't always need to hear it, because I know there are a lot of people who don't talk about their feelings. In my experience, I can tell they don't really like to hear me talk about mine.
No.
But that doesn't mean don't stop, because they might not be the same humble, courageous person that you are becoming. So if you continue to lie to yourself and lie to your family and lie to your friends, you're only making yourself worse and the people that care most about you worse too. You're better off just telling the truth. And it starts with telling the truth to yourself. And if you don't like who you are, I know a lot of people don't like this person, or some people do, but listen to Jordan Peterson. I firmly believe that he has helped me a lot with the self-abuse that I talk to myself. And I listen to him daily, and he helps me treat myself the way I know I should be treated, and know that, life is hard, and it's going to continue to be hard, but we got to be grateful. And you can't blame people for the reasons why we are where we are. It's your fault. It's no one else's fault. And it's only you that's going to get yourself out of the basement. Or if you're spending too much time on playing video games, tell yourself you're playing too much video games and stop. Or whatever the hell it is. It's only you that's going to change. No one else is going to pick you up from where you are. You have to make that decision. I'm happy to talk to any of your audience I'm not one that has a PhD either, man. I cheated on everything in my life. Okay. But I've also learned more about my life and myself in these past 3 years in therapy than any year in my life.
Yeah, it's something that I can't stress enough to people is find someone that works for you, man. Talk to anybody. There's organizations now that you can just have phone calls with. You don't even have to go see a therapist. If that's your thing, like just call and be a part of it, right? So in the pre-show, I was talking to Joe about Men Able, the organization out of the UK that's coming into the United States, and it's encouraging men, specifically in our automotive business, but screw that. Just as men. And that's why I wanted to have someone who's not in auto, who's not someone who, if you've seen my feed, maybe you've never seen Joe's feed, maybe you have no idea who Joe is. Get to know Joe because he's going to be open and honest about it. And Joe, man, I got to tell you, you are as open, honest, and raw as I could have ever hoped for you to be on this episode. You put it out there. And I hope it encourages other people to do the same because, it's only been 3 years for you, man. That's it. You've been changing your life over 3 years. And the last 18 months have been some of the most jacked up 18 months you're ever going to experience in your life before or after. So to say that, again, here you are, Joe, ready for a child, ready for a pandemic. I can't imagine pandemic Joe previous to therapy. That scares me to worry about, that sort of situation of who you could have been versus this. And look, it's easy for me to come on here and talk with folks about this because these aren't necessarily things that I've struggled with. I haven't had depression. If anything, I'm too full of myself. I'm the smartest dude when I walk in a room. That's my problem. I'm on the opposite side of keeping myself in check and realizing that I'm not the smartest. I can listen. I can learn. That's been my issue, right? And Joe, yours was on the other side, but here we are colliding in the middle, which is just plain and simple. It's humanity. There's nothing weird about this at all. Talking about how you feel, telling someone else how you feel ain't weird. It's humanity. It's what we need to do to evolve. Joe, thanks again, man. You're tremendous, man. Bravo to you and your honesty and all that you do, man. Keep it up.
I want to thank you so much, Sean. It was really great connecting. One other thing that I will recommend is, not sure if your audience has ever heard the man David Goggins or read the book Can't Hurt Me, but I would read that or listen to the audio book. Vulnerability is a superpower. Okay?
Vulnerability is a superpower, he says, man. I know lots of folks in my world have definitely gotten into David's stuff for sure. So that'll be an easy cross for people. Again, Joe, thank you again so much. You've done such a great job. Folks, you can find Joe. He's on LinkedIn. Check him out. He is all over the place. You will see him on the post here as we go live. And if you need any questions or just anything, reach out to Joe. I'm sure he'd be happy to tell you how he found what he found and the journey that he's been on in further detail. Joe, again, thank you for coming on, bud. And next week on the show, I'm gonna get back in the solo saddle, and I'm gonna have some fun at the expense of data and analytics. So you'll want to tune in. Don't miss that. Thank you, everyone. Go out, have yourselves a wonderful week. Don't forget to join us on Get Outside Fridays, and once again on next Monday's show. Thanks a lot.